So many of you here, as probably 90% of you know, my wife Ellie and I founded this place, Stage One.
Mike, use the mic. If you can.
Thank you.
Near your mouth.
Thank you.
As many of you know, my wife Ellie and I founded this place, Stage One, for precisely this kind of a gathering, especially for community groups like the Rose Valley Chorus to rehearse and to perform. And we've had quite a successful time of it. Now, I met Mark in 1983 when he auditioned to be a very different kind of pirate king. And he was all over the room, let me tell you. We have a tape of that show playing over in the corner there, and we'll turn it on again afterwards. His approach was novel, energetic, very, very interesting. And as we built scenery for the show, I was impressed by the way he worked. We amateurs had saber saws and drills, of course, and he wanted to use his own tools, and he had a van full of them. I'd never seen so many different tools. I didn't know what half of them were good for, but I was intrigued. A few years later, our daughter announced her engagement to be married in a year. She wanted the reception at our house. Oh boy. If any of you have had your daughter's reception at home, you will understand the painting and the papering and the cleaning and the planting and so on and so on. I finally added up 26 different vendors. It almost ruined us. She said it was her gift to us. and in a real way it was. Now we have a house that's papered and painted. Critical to the success of the reception was isolating guest children with pizza away from the salmon and the bubbly. We decided to build a playhouse for them in the back corner of the yard, and that's when the fun began. We asked Bertie Bonner, who's here somewhere. Bertie, hi there. We asked Bertie Bonner, who designed our kitchen, to design a playhouse, and we asked Mark to help build it. And that was the beginning of my friendship with Mark. He was comfortable working with amateurs, my son and I, and that, of course, was critical to making the process work. And, of course, he had all those wonderful tools. As time passed, my son and I bought many of the tools like the ones that he had. We dug the foundation in the fall of 1989 and poured the slab, and then Mark and I laid up the block walls for the first floor during January, working inside a tent of plastic laid over 2x4 frames, a frame with a kerosene heater for company. We drank a lot of hot coffee and we ate a lot of donuts. We had many volunteers helping, even Bertie Bonner strapped on an ailing apron. That was a great day. And we enjoyed Mark's conversation and jokes back and forth. We even invented a number of credos. No job is simple. Every job takes all your tools. Try it sometime. And finally, the other fellow's job is always more interesting than your own. But it was when Mark and I were working by ourselves later after the wedding and taking breaks that we began to share our histories, and I was honored by his confidences. The playhouse and the gazebo were complete enough for the reception, and we finished them up in about a year. And that was the beginning of years of construction. For example, shelves in the library, a wall cabinet in cherry for Eleanor, a flagstone front walk we laid together, and that's just a few. Mark was always concerned that what he built should be well done. His last job of many illustrates this clearly. We were working on the door to the upper story of the garage. Now, that house was built in about 1915. And the hinges were old castings, and Mark appreciated that. Sadly, one of them snapped. So Mark took it to a magician he knew who was able to sew the solder back together invisibly so the door could have its original hinges, because that's the way it ought to be. So much trouble over a hinge, but characteristic. And then there was his sense of style. The rack I asked him to make for welding tanks could have been plain and workable, but it turned out to be both handsome and workable. And of course, I saw this creative ability in his acting and stage directing too. Now, there's hardly any place around the property not improved by something he helped build. But more important to me than things is the practical knowledge I got working with him, and more important than that, his friendship. His last scribbled Christmas card says, "It is impossible to sectionalize the 25 plus years I've spent with you on many projects, each releasing a flood of connected activities that are endless visual trailers that last forever. I'm sorry they are over. I'm sorry too." I will never forget the many times when, on the one hand, we produced the best work we could, and on the other, were at our best, joking and quoting and verbalizing over coffee. What a grand way to spend time. That was the heart of the relationship. We had fun achieving useful and attractive improvements, being the best we could be. Shakespeare might have been thinking of Mark when he wrote, "When he shall die, take him and cut him out in little stars, and he shall make the face of heaven so fine that all the world will be in love with night and pay no worship to the garish sun."
That would be Mark's height.
No wonder I liked him so well. It was so hard to learn that Mark had left us, and it got me thinking about the differences that people make in our lives. And he is one for sure that has made a difference in my life, but it's in small little sound bites throughout my life. It wasn't a thread that followed all the way through, but he sure made a difference in mine, and I know in all of yours, or you wouldn't be here. The heroes in our lives are those who help us through the journey or a difficult time, or someone who has taught us something or made us feel appreciative or special. These are our heroes, the ones who cared for us, even if only for a fleeting moment. And Mark was certainly one of those people. I first met Mark when he was a mime in Savoy's 1975 Utopia Limited show. I think Mark had done some miming as a profession, but I'm not quite sure, so I don't know if anybody knows that as a fact. I think he and Marilyn maybe done that in Europe or whatever. I'm sure he showed up for Savoy for an audition, because I think Marilyn might have been a minor lead in that show, and they didn't know what to do with him. he was Mark. So they made a place for him. No mime exists in Utopia Limited. But there was Mark. They found a place for him. The next year was 1976 Pirates, and he became a policeman for that. And I was with him in all these shows. But I specifically remember him as the usher in Savoy's 1977 trial by jury, where he was, of course, the most demonstrable usher that you can imagine. Mark continued with Savoy in the 1980s, but he was offstage. He was a master carpenter for 3 or 4 years, and he was a stage manager for 6 more years with Savoy. Is Hillary, did you make it here? Good. Would you like to come up and take over this portion, because I was not involved. I left Savoy after 81 season to actually come here to Rose Valley. This is Hillary Whittick from Savoy.
Hey, sorry, I'm not used to talking with a mic, so I apologize. A little closer?
Yeah, a little closer.
So, I met Mark Biesenkel in 1983. at a cast party for Savoy at Judge Gothrop's. Should I say anything?
No.
All right. So at that time, Backstage was maybe a year, 2 years old. Savoy, as with any organization, especially a volunteer organization, you go through your lulls, your highs. Membership's up, membership's down. 1970s, going into the early 80s, membership was pretty low. And the company was beginning to explore ways of trying to expand membership and trying to get more people to become active, because the theory is that the more people who are active, the more tickets you sell. So Backstage was a concept. It had been something that people had been working on at the same time as they were on stage. So they would come backstage on the weekends. So you had people doing multiple jobs for the company, and people were getting tired. So the thought of breaking Backstage off, making it officially a separate unit, was, you know, something that had been toyed with, but Mark was really very instrumental in not only having it happen, but also making it succeed. And I see Peter, Steve. Thank you, Joe. I don't know why. And Liz, and I'm sorry, all of a sudden in front of, doesn't matter. Oh my God, Debbie. So Debbie was the set designer. Peter was the head of Backstage, and Mark was master carpenter. Mark was master carpenter. What was critical about those years is this was the first time that we had people who only were backstage. And I only wanted to be backstage. Polly, you were with me my first year as well. And, you know, my gift to society is not singing. So being backstage was where I belonged and what I wanted to do. And at that party, Peter, you were there as well. I met the two of you, and we, at that point, that party, that moment, all of a sudden it was kind of like, okay, I'm looking for kindred souls. And I found them, to the point where Savoy is a very big part of my life. Fred, I see you as well. And we are, so one of the things that Mark Busenkel knew, and this is why I think he was so critical in making Backstage successful in those years when it could have plummeted. But Backstage helped Savoy survive, or at least to boost up those membership numbers. And one of the reasons why, was because of Mark, but Mark understood a couple of things, and one of which was that no matter what, you had to have fun. Can anybody here say that they ever thought Mark was not fun? Mark knew how to have fun. There was a reference to the van. Well, I don't know how many vans Mark went through, but I swear one of them, I know it had shag rug. It was amazing. But he would pile us. Claire, I remember one time we were all going to see Bill Barker perform Jesus Christ Superstar, and we're all crammed into the back of that van. You know, 6 packs of beer, and he's driving, we're all going all over the place. But that was Mark. But Mark also understood something else, and that was that in order for people to want to come back day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, and stay active with the company, you had to have more than just fun, because you can get fun anywhere. But the one thing Mark knew was that you had to provide value. You had to have people feel valued. And Mark knew that one of the things that when you're building something and you're involved from the beginning and you look at it as a, you know, it's on the floor mapped out, or just drawings, Debbie, your drawings, taking it from the concept of a drawing through to the the measurements, to the how do you build it? What's the order of building it? And then getting it built. Mark did that. Mark knew how to do that. And he also knew how to get people involved so that they felt that they knew how to do it too. And that their contribution was what helped that to happen, helped that moment, that once the curtain went up on the stage, and there's a pause, and then there's an applause. And that was Savoy's backstage moment, was hearing that applause. And we'd be there in the boxes, and nudging, that's for us, that's for us. And that would be Mark, that's for us. And that had persistence. And that was Mark. And that, to me, is Mark's gift to Savoy, is that he gave backstage value. He let us know how, to be a member of a company where everybody's singing, everybody's on stage. You want to be on stage? No, we wanted to be backstage because we wanted to build that set. So, thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Hillary. Ted Pierce, who was a member of Savoy, he actually became a member in 1972 when I first joined Savoy. We joined together, and then he went on to become president in 1981, and he now lives in Williamsburg, Virginia. He sent us his regards, saying, of course, that he's sorry that he couldn't make it today, but he wanted us to know that Mark was one of a kind and always seemed to have a smile and a good word. I treasure his memory and his substantial contributions to Savoy, both on stage and backstage. Bill and Nancy Stroud are both Savoyards living up in Massachusetts. They had joined in 1979 and 1981. They had actually met and married in Savoy, and they send their regrets and add as well that we both loved Mark very much. In addition to our Savoy connection, he did a lot of beautiful cabinetry work for my mother. And later, Bill and I moved into that house on Grouse Lane in Radnor, so we thought of him nearly daily for the 7 years we lived there. Much love to everyone on Sunday and always. In 1981, I moved from Philadelphia to Wallingford. I lived probably 4 blocks away maybe, and found the Rose Valley Chorus right in my backyard. They were older than Savoy, which was good for me because I was older than I was 10 years earlier. And it was certainly less of a commute to go the half a mile to Alfred and Eleanor's house for rehearsals. So I joined joined Rose Valley in the fall of 1981. I reconnected with Mark when in 1983 he became the Pirate King for the Pirates of Penzance. And I will never forget that he broke all barriers with his very first entrance on there with great panache. He came swinging down on a rope as if he were swooping down from the ship and landing on the beach. And he was flashing his sword and flashing his famous grin, his mile-wide grin that we all know and came to love. I have so many fond memories of Mark with Rose Valley. The other one that really stands out was in 1986, he was a stage director for Rose Valley's Princess Ida. In addition to being on stage that year, I must have also been producer or something like that because I became involved with Mark's desire that in the second act, he was always a visionary. In the second act, he wanted a set that included a substantial gate to Princess Ida's castle. This gate had to be constructed so the chorus members could walk up onto it and that they could walk over it. The set construction crew took a big breath and then they built that humongous gate. Alfred, where are you? Do you remember that gate? I'm sure he does. I remember Alfred moving that gate. It was huge. In middle of the season, I was absent for about a month due to my dad's death. And when I returned, I could see that Mark had staged Death to the Invader, the women's chorus act, Death to the Invader. He'd staged it for the women, but he'd forgotten about the gate because we were rehearsing on a flat room in the rehearsal hall. And he totally forgot about the big gate, and I'm thinking about all the sweat and tears that the construction crew had put together to get that gate up there, and damn it, I was not going to let it go unused. So it turned out that all the axes had been given out to the women's chorus, and when I showed up, they didn't have any axes left over. But they did have a couple spears, so I said, "Oh, spears, great!" So I took Bets Melly. Where's Bets? You're here today. I took Bets Melly and Sonja Allen, and I walked us with Mark's permission, of course. But I walked us up on top of that gate and staged the three of us up there with our spears, and we were making a little dance up there. And later, people came to me later and they said, "What did you do to get that role?" It was the start of something big. Oh gosh! The thing that amazed me is that we saved Mark's reputation with the construction crew. I was happy for that. In 1986, 87, and 88. Mark was also directing Arden Singers, and Bruce Monroe is here, and I asked him to come say a few words on behalf of the Arden Singers, because I wasn't involved in Arden in those days. Thank you, Bruce.
Martha just reminded me of the first time I saw Mark. It was the 1975 production of Utopia Limited at Longwood, and he was miming to Lady Sophie's first act solo. And I'm sitting there saying, "Why are they doing this?" Now I know. Only took 40 years. Now I know. Mark directed Patience for Arden Singers in 1986, and he cast me in the leading role of Mr. Bunthorne's solicitor. A role I actually played again last night. I had some tickets left. And you all weren't there? You have another chance next weekend. We're playing in Smyrna.
Downtown Smyrna.
Beautiful downtown Smyrna. No. And that was so successful that I decided to go to law school at age 52, but that's a different story. In 1987, he directed, I need to say about Patience. He had for some reason, he had the dragoons, when their first entrance, they formed sort of a circle like this, and he had them all going this way with spears or something. I don't remember, but it's... And somebody came up and said, "I don't know what you guys are doing, but it sure looks military up there." 1987, he directed Gondoliers with Fred Wampler as the Duke of Plaza Toro. And then in 1988, he directed HMS Pinafore on a double bill with Trial by Jury, which was directed by Sam Griffin. Now, I don't remember a lot about that production, but Ron Fava put together quite a history of the Arden Singers, and there's a picture of Mark in here talking to the cast right before the beginning of HMS Pinafore. You probably can't see it, but
We can put it out on the table for
okay.
afterwards.
He's standing on a chair, so people can see it. Last time I saw Mark in 2009, he came to the Chester County production of Pirates of Penzance, and after the show, he came down the basement to talk to the cast and the crew, and we had a nice talk about that. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. Oh, he left me a ticket.
You might be a winner.
I may. I've had my share of Bunthorns. I don't recall buying a ticket for them. I've lost my place, sorry. Story of Mark is, it just was, it was really tough for me because Mark had helped me through the transition of being a chorus member into becoming a principal lead. And he just did it in a lot of little tiny ways. And finally, I guess I'd gone to Thespis, Thespis Etc. was a little group at the Unitarian Church. And Thespis was, I always called it a farm league. They hated me when I called them that. but it really was a farm league. And it was a place where those of us who hadn't the opportunity yet to be cast in a role could cut our teeth and get going in a small venue that maybe held 60 people. And it was as close as this. When you were on stage, you could actually see everybody that you were, you're 3 feet from the audience. And I had been cast as, it was my first role as Cadishaw. And I had to enter down through the center aisle and then get upstage. You know, the show's The Mikado, and Cadishaw comes in at the end of Act 1, and she's threatening the chorus because she's looking for her young love, Nanky Poo. And so I'm coming down the aisle and I get up on stage and I'm trying to be so dramatic and so threatening. And I turn around and there 3 feet in front of me is Mark Busenkel with his gigantic grin on his face. I just kept trying to threaten and I couldn't wipe that smile off his face. And of course I adored him for that. So thank you all. Thanks very much. Those are my memories.
Share some memories. This is Bob Moore, if you would, with, I guess you're mainly with Rose Valley. And so, Bob, here you are.
Thank you. Wow, I've learned a lot about Mark. I thought I knew him, but after the day, I didn't know him at all. I'm Bob Moore with Rose Valley Chorus and Orchestra. And back in 1983, in desperation, our then president, Ian Williamson, called me and said, "We're in a real fix. We can't get a director for Pirates. All of our GNS directors are either unavailable or uninterested in doing the show. Could you do it?" Well, I'd worked with Rose Valley since 1974 as a musical theater actor, and I never directed for the group before. So I said, well, I don't know GNS. I'm not a GNS person. And quite frankly, some of the Pirates I've seen in the past have been rather uninteresting to me. They were very standard. He said, well, we want something really innovative. And I said, so I just saw the Broadway revival with Kevin Kline. And I said, that was innovative. That was musical theater to me. It wasn't GNS. He said, that's what we want. I said, okay. I said, that's what you're going to get because I don't know how to do the other. Well, anyway, we had auditions, and we had some of our standard gentlemen come out to audition for the Pirate King, and they gave wonderful auditions, but they were the traditional auditions. And then the door opened, and this little, wiry man comes running in, Mark Busengill, and I'd never heard of him before. And I thought, wow, what a creative, talented man. And so my mind was already made up that that's who I wanted for the Pirate King, and I thought, is the board going to accept this? Well, they were a little dubious at first. They said, well, he's not really our traditional type of Pirate King, but if you think he's going to work, we'll try him. I said, he's going to work. If you want a different kind of show, he'll be it. So in fact, many of our original cast is here today. I'm thrilled to see so many of you. Anyway, Mark sort of set the pace for the whole show. And I love the fact that he was so athletic and wiry. That's why I had him fly in on a rope. I don't know if it had ever been done before, and I didn't really care because I wanted something very, very different, which is what Rose Valley had asked of me. And Mark was a total delight to work with. The whole cast just fell in love with him. I'm not sure if you've done any other shows. Had you done shows with Rose Valley before that? Or was that his first?
Not before.
First
Okay.
one.
Well, our Frederick's here and many other cast members. Anyway, everybody loved working with Mark. He was so out of the box, and he gave the most interesting and, to me, exciting portrayal of the Pirate King. That was the only show I ever really worked with him on. I never performed with him. My partner, Bonnie Decker, who couldn't make it today, we were in the makeup designers for production of Pinafore some years later. And Mark was Dick Deadeye, and all of you know who Dick Deadeye is, I'm sure. And Mark, you know, being the creative man he was, he said, I want my makeup to be really wild. I want my eyeball to be hanging on my cheek. And we looked at it and said, well, I don't quite know that we can do that, plus that'd be pretty disgusting. But Bonnie and her, well, she's so creative, she managed to create some kind of a really bizarre eye. And for those of you that were involved in that show, remember. And he loved it. He wanted everything to be different. He didn't want anything traditional or standard. And he was just a delight to work with, no matter how you're working as a fellow actor or directing him or even doing his makeup. He was a true creative genius, in my opinion. And he's going to be greatly missed by all of us.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
So Mark was in Mask and Wig, started I guess in 1964 and then 65, 66, so 3 shows. I guess Sorry Charlie was his first show, and I don't know that he was actually planning to be in the show, but maybe filled in the pit crew, or rather in the pit band as a bassist. So he's playing bass in the pit. He was very talented. He could play piano, I think he could probably play any instrument. But anyway, then the next year he was on stage and had a part and sang and danced. And that was, let's see, so Sorry Charlie, help me out here. Listen, They're Playing Our Song. That was the next show. And then About Farce was his senior year when he rose to the position of undergraduate chairman, so that was his career as an undergraduate in Mask and Wig. Now I'm about 12 years younger than Mark, and so I didn't know him then. And there are a few people here who could speak to those times if they want. Maybe they'll share. But he came back as a member of our alumni board of governors, and also worked on our committee on production for a year or two. And so he was active as an alumni, directing or helping to direct the show, and worked with Bruce Montgomery, who was our musical director there at Penn. So, and then was also active in the alumni group puts on a show for the undergraduates on Club Night, and I remember him directing me in one of those shows. And he was a great musical talent. And if I'm not mistaken, and Steve, you can correct me, Steve Goff back there, can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that he is the first person I knew who could put Clay Boland's Gypsy in My Soul together with Bobby Troupe's Hey Daddy. And we sang that as a duet, you know,